you guys. It's been a really, really long time since I've been on this stage. So I figure what better way to come back into the scene than to do a piece that scares the living shit out of me.
Oh, I like that.
So here we go.
Yay!
So my friend Richie calls me up the other day, right, to see about going to a Mets game. God help us. And also to remind me that I'm a poet. He's got the opportunity to jump on the lineup for a spoken word event about mental illness, and so he's looking for poets that have a mental illness. Who have a diagnosis or, who have symptoms of a diagnosis. Now, my friend Richie knows me as a poet because we did meet over a microphone in some well-chosen words, but I have never written about mental illness. At least not anything I can slap a title onto and spit into a mic. And so while Richie is a wise man and understands a kindred spirit when he sees one, there is a certain propriety to these things. Don't worry, I tell him. I have a diagnosis. Couple of them, actually. Post-traumatic stress disorder with associated major depressive disorder. There. I said it. I said it out loud, and I said it out into the world where I can't take it back, where I can't hide from it any longer. I have a diagnosis. You know, I suppose I should be grateful. You know, I should feel some kind of relief because we humans, we have this thing about naming things, right? Because if you can name a thing, you've got power over it. Now, I know this to be true from my ancestors, because my grandma used to call me by all three of my names when I had gotten up to something that put grass stains on the knees of my Sunday best. And take it from me, there ain't nothing holds more power over an 8-year-old than a tiny southern woman wielding a persimmon switch.
Oh my God.
I mean, we can go back to the beginning of time, back to the beginning of that book that everyone claims to have read so well, and find two poor souls besought with the unenviable task of naming every damn thing on earth. I mean, we can conquer a demon if we just know its name. But I gotta tell you, most days I don't feel like I'm conquering demons or taming a wilderness of things I've never seen before. I mean, this name, it's nothing new. I've been called names my entire life. Most days, this name is just another chapter heading in the table of contents that is my life. Chapter 1, abnormal. The name given to a 5-year-old who reads before she ought to, understands what she ought not to, and thinks the coolest person on the face of the earth is a dude named Leonardo da Vinci. Chapter 2, weird. The playground battle cry that precedes the violence meant to teach a kid about who has power and who doesn't. Chapter 3, misfit. The 5-minute epilogue to every 20-minute parent-teacher conference spent gushing accolades at my unlikely success. Chapter 4, black sheep. The pet name given by a parent to explain why one child is just not quite as worthy as another. I mean, to me, this diagnosis is just the name scrawled at the top of a hall pass that excuses me from the best parts of life. It permits me access to wander empty hallways alone in silence with my nose pressed to the quarantine glass, watching while everyone else is outside having fun. You know, I get angry at my diagnosis. I get angry at my diagnosis because other people get to be quirky or to go through hard times or to shop for baggage in designer relationships, but I have to be sick. I get angry at my diagnosis because all the best parts of me are shoved aside or somehow made feeble in light of my illness. I get angry at my diagnosis because it's just the name scrawled at the top of a doctor's note that denies me such fineries in life as grief or sorrow or outrage. Because when you have a diagnosis, your every marvelous, wonderful emotion is reduced to just a symptom. I get angry at my diagnosis because I don't know what it means to have one. I get angry at my diagnosis because I can't climb trees at my age or bawl in joy at the beauty of a sunset or become enraged by injustice without someone rolling their eyes or commenting on my insanity. I get angry at my diagnosis because to other people, when you have one, it means that you can't handle your life. It's not that I can't handle my life. It's that I can't ignore it. I'm Sometimes I wish my diagnosis would just stand up for itself. I wish it wouldn't believe the playground taunts that it is ugly or shameful or contagious. I want to tell my diagnosis that I am here for it, that it is never alone, that it always has a friend in me, just me. Loyal, beautiful, brave, strong, stubborn me. I want to tell my diagnosis that I understand and know exactly what it's like to be lonely or excluded or beat up in the hallways. I want to tell my diagnosis that I'm proud of it for staring into the void when its playground tormentors would flee screaming in terror. And I want to tell my diagnosis to hang in there, to never give up, because if you stare into that void long enough and you stare hard enough, you'll find wisdom and self-awareness there. I want to tell my diagnosis so many things, but I don't know how to. And so I tell my diagnosis to write. I give my diagnosis a pen and scraps of paper torn from that book called A Better Life. I give my diagnosis a pen and I tell it to scrawl its name over every building and bridge, every sunset and sycamore. I tell it to write me epic stories of conquering demons or to paint me pictures of a world of wild and wonderful things. I give my diagnosis a pen and I tell it to make poetry from the broken pieces of life. And I tell my diagnosis to keep screaming into the void. But I tell it, for the sake of everything holy, scream into a mic. Because on mic, at last, the void like thunder answers back.